Let's make fingerless gloves using our 48 needle Sentro circular knitting machine. We're going to use the cast on waste yarn method. If you do not know how to use that method, I have the full step-by-step tutorial on how to do that linked in the video description below. So let's get going making our fingerless gloves. We're going to take our circular knitting machine and cast on using our waste yarn, which is a similar weight yarn to our project yarn, but in a contrasting color. Once I have about 6 to 7 rows, we're going to then start with our project yarn, and I'm going to crank out 50 rows. So these are going to be a little bit longer gloves. If you like the glove shorter, you can do less rows. Once you have cranked out as many rows as you would like for your fingerless gloves, we're going to finish with the waste yarn cast off method. I do at least about 8 to 10 rows of the waste yarn cast off. Now we need to flatten our tube. This is why it's important to use a contrasting color. That first row of gold is my project yarn, and I count up to the 24th stitch because we have 48 stitches in total. So on both sides, I count up to the 24th stitch and I mark those with a stitch marker, and this is so I can flatten the tube down even on both sides. Now, taking a crochet hook, I'm going to remove my stitch marker, and with my crochet hook, we're going to slip stitch the tube close. I pick up my right 24th stitch, and then I'm going to also pick up the left 24th stitch. And now I'm going to slip stitch the left through the right stitch. Now pick up the right stitch and slip stitch it through the next stitch. And we're going to go back and forth, left to right, slip stitching it all the way down till we get to the end of our project. And it's making like an X or a zigzag shape. You want to make sure you don't miss any stitches. If you find you have a big hole, that means you missed one, and you want to undo the stitches and pick that up, because once we move the waste yarn, we want to make sure all these stitches are locked in place. If not, you're going to drop a stitch and it will unravel. At the end, there might be a few that are kind of hidden tucked down in there, so just take your time picking them up. Like this one here, he's kind of hidden there, so we want to make sure we get them, and you can always count to make sure you pick up all 48. Lastly, we'll take the tail end of our project yarn and we're going to slip it through the last loop, and that's going to lock it into place so none of the stitches are now going to drop. We're going to do the same thing on the other side of the tube. We're going to count up to the 2 24th stitches. I mark them with a stitch marker, and I start with the tail ends of the project and my waste yarn at the bottom, and I count up on both sides. And then we're going to slip stitch them all the way down again, picking up the yarn and slip stitching it back and forth all the way down. For the crochet hook size, I use what's recommended on the package of the yarn I'm using. This is a Simply Soft Premier yarn in the color Cappuccino. It's super soft. The crochet hook size I'm using is a 6mm. And so as we're flattening our tube, again, you just want to make sure that you don't miss any of the stitches as you're working your way down. And I am only picking up the first stitches or the first row of my project yarn. So it's nice that my waste yarn is this bright red, so it's really easy to see what's my project yarn versus what's my waste yarn, especially when we get down to the end where some of the stitches can kind of hide and get tucked into the corner. So here's one just where you want to take your time to make sure you get all of the stitches. And as you can see, there was one right down in there I almost missed. So we want to make sure we get him. Slip stitch him down. And now for our last one, take the tail end of our working yarn and pull it through that last stitch to lock everything into place so nothing unravels. Once we have everything down and locked into place, make sure you didn't miss any of the stitches. It should look like this when you're done. And it kind of makes this X or zigzag shape. Now we can remove the waste yarn from the project. This was the cast off end, which is the easier end to unravel. You just take the tail end and pull, and it will unravel the rows of the waste yarn until it's completely off of the project. The other option is to do a Ravel cord cast on, which I'll have linked to the video description below if you'd like to do that. The cast on side is a little bit harder to unravel if you don't do the Ravel cord cast on, but it's still pretty simple. Just find the tail end of your waste yarn, and these ones are locked into place because it's the cast on side. So once you find that tail end, we're going to undo the first row all the way around, taking it out of the loops of each of the 48 stitches. Once you have that undone one time around, then you can pull just like on the other end of your project, and all the rows will drop and unravel. And you can reuse this waste yarn over and over again until it starts kind of getting fuzzy, then I'll get new waste yarn. Now we're going to fold our project in half like a burrito to make our fingerless glove, and we are going to mattress stitch up the side of our project. The last video I will have linked in the video description below is a video just on mattress stitching, but what we were going to do is we're going to pick up the little bar that's in between the V or the point of the knit stitch back and forth, kind of like when we slip stitch back and forth to flatten our tube. It's kind of similar with that pattern, except for we're using our darning needle and a piece of yarn that's matching color to our project. And you can see this knit stitch here. It looks like a little V. And at that point, use your needle to go in between that point, and you'll find a little bar of yarn. That is the yarn you're going to pick up to make your mattress stitch. And we do that back and forth all the way up until we get to the part where you want your thumb hole to be. And you want to make sure you stay in the same row for your mattress stitch. If you jump over to another row on either side, it's going to get kind of a twisted look. So if you happen to do that, it's really easy. Just undo the stitches you did and just make sure you stay in the same row on both sides that you're stitching together to make a seamless join, or almost seamless join. So I like to check my work after every few inches where I pull the yarn just to make sure I didn't skip any stitches or I didn't jump over into another row, because it can be kind of easy to do when you're working with a single color. As I continue to mattress stitch up, I periodically just stop and check to make sure I'm picking up the right stitches and I'm in the right row. I'll also every now and then put it on my hand because we're going to want to leave a hole for the thumb opening. So here I am checking my work, and if you stay in the correct row and you pick up the correct part of the knit stitch, it's going to look like a seamless join together where it's really hard to tell where the two sides come together. So here's just another close-up of where that knit stitch is and picking up that little bar that's hidden right at the point of the knit stitch. And we do that back and forth all the way up. So now we're ready to make the opening for our thumb. So I'm going to mattress stitch up a few more of the stitches. And then once I get to the point where I want my thumb opening to be, I like to skip 6 stitches on the row that I'm on. So here's where I have stopped, and I'm going to count up 6 stitches and just put my needle up and under through the row. And pull it through the top. So that will make the opening for our thumb. And now to join the opening, we're going to count up the same amount of stitches on the other side. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Put in our mattress stitch on that side to join to close the hole. Now we can continue mattress stitching all the way up to the top of our mitten. Once I get up to the top, I will knot the yarn into place to secure it, and then I will weave in my ends, and you can hide any excess tail ends in between the 2 layers of the glove. Before you knot anything down or weave in your ends, always put it on periodically just to check that everything is where you want it to be, because it's really easy to undo the mattress stitch if you want to move where your thumb hole is or anything like that. Once I'm up to the top, we're going to do our last stitch to join the 2 sides together. And now I have the other tail end of my working yarn also up there as well, so I will knot the 2 ends together. And I like to do a few knots just to make sure everything is nice and secure, and then I hide the tail ends in between the 2 layers of the glove. And this just adds a little extra security. I do put them down and I knot them together again, and then I put them in between the 2 layers again. And now I'm going to cut off the little bit of extra that we have. And there is your fingerless glove complete. Now all you need to do is make your other hand. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that like and follow button. I appreciate all of your support. Happy crafting, everyone.